authors. Happy Thursday. I am Melody Ann, your host and the founder of Author Nation, which is a community of authors in your place to become a successful nonfiction author. If you'd like to be a successful nonfiction author, join us. The link is in the description. Today's interview, I'm interviewing someone who's going to talk about writing when there is an extra obstacle in the way. So, in stirring my soul to sing, overcoming ADHD through song, first-time Canadian author W. Ian Walker, ADHD survivor, musician, author, and speaker, tells his story of lifelong struggles with ADHD, that is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and how he found relief by leaning into his music and his Christian faith during his successful 30-year career in music and the arts. Walker's book continues to grow in distribution and is listed in 43 international bookseller websites and stores. Let's welcome Ian. Hi, Ian. How are you today?
Hi there, Melody. This is wonderful to connect with you.
Yes. I'm so glad you're here today. Okay, first question. You've been in the music industry a long time. And I want to know, there are always these kind of unsung music industry heroes that we never hear about because they don't have all that fame. Who would be, like, of all the people you've worked with, who would be that person for you?
Okay, so let me go down the rank. Now, I've worked in classical music, and choral music, some orchestral, but the ultimate one who just blew my socks off was meeting Leonard Bernstein.
Okay, wow.
And that was at Tanglewood in 1981, and that was just a thrill of a lifetime. Just to be able, I got a 20-minute chat with him, and we talked about choral music, so that's really awesome. The other one who comes to mind is Maureen Forrester. She was a Canadian, huge, amazing contralto, and just had an incredible personality for young artists and singers. And she took me under her wing. And I talk a little bit about my relationship with her in the book. And she later became head of the Canada Council, which is a huge, arts funding here. And she did a fabulous job. And sadly, she passed away the same year my mom did in 2010. And to lose both my mom and Maureen, that was pretty. So, and the next on the list would be Sir David Wilcox. So you're familiar with Christmas at King's. It goes all around. It's a huge Christmas, connection, and the King's College, Cambridge. And Sir David Wilcox was just one of the most amazing musicians and just a super, super guy. And we communicated, even in his 80s to 90s, we communicated on via email. And I thought he was incredible. And he lived to be about 95.
Wow. Thank you, Ian.
Yeah. So there's my top three.
Yeah.
Oh, but I guess I should tell you this. Yes. I'm also related to Jonathan and Jordan Knight of the New Kids on the Block. They're my third cousins.
Oh,
with
that's
the connections to the Canada. They're my third cousins. Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
So music flows all really well on my mom's side of the family. There's a number of artists and musicians in that side of the family.
That's amazing. Thank you. I always, whenever they're like the worlds where there are celebrities, like, Hollywood or like movie or music, they're always unsung heroes. And I don't know, I'm an underdog lover. I want to for those unsung heroes, people we don't hear about enough, but they're actually like amazing human beings. All right, let's talk about you. Now, you were diagnosed with ADHD at one point in your life. Do you want to just give us some background on that?
So I was a 1970s kid, all right, where they used to call, hyperactive, right? And then later in the early 80s or so, it got the name of attention deficit hyper disorder, ADHD. So I was diagnosed as I wanted to go back to university in 1996 to continue working on my degree. I'd started my degree in music, but it was really too difficult academically for me to be able to handle it. So I changed universities, went to the university where I'm living here now in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, at McMaster University. It's also, McMaster is very well known for its sciences and a lot of things. So, but they have a fabulous humanities department. And so I started my degree in theater and film. Now, by this time I had started at the University of Western Ontario for the music degree. So because of the ADHD, I just, I had to do it in small chunks. And I was diagnosed in 1996 with the disorder. And then I worked at it continuously till 2009 when I graduated. So I spent 27 years working on getting my degree, but I got it.
Yeah, and that's what counts. And that's what counts. Yeah. And I want to say thank you for being an advocate. Is one thing that I want to say is that just because somebody has ADHD or whatever it may be doesn't mean that you get to go up and ask them questions and personal questions about their life. But if somebody says, I'm willing to be an advocate and I'm willing to speak out, then we can have conversations like this. So I just want to thank you for being that person, because it's certainly not your responsibility to clear up misconceptions for us. But
well,
since you're willing.
I think the thing is that my story is so unique because it's an arts-based story, because it's a faith-based story too. And, those things really sort of went hand in hand. And there aren't stories like mine. There aren't books like mine out there, And so I'm really happy to fill the gap.
No, that's great. And we need people to fill the gap. I just wanted to put it out there for anyone listening that it's not actually everyone's job to explain their lives to you. It's, but if there's an advocate, then you may ask. And so since you're advocating, I do want to ask you some questions. So a lot of people say that, okay, if you have ADHD, it's that you have a lot of energy and you can't focus, but there's more to it.
There is more to it. Yeah. And I mean, for me, it definitely was a focusing issue. But sadly, because I was like 12 or 13 when they were trying me on the medication, and it was a form of Ritalin, my body rejected it. It did not like it at all. I used to fight with my mother when I'd have to take the pills. And even just a couple of years ago, my doctor just said, let's just put you back on it and see what happens. And I said, my body just does not like those drugs. So that's good for me. And then I decided and started to work towards my motto, which is music versus medicine. And that's doing things without medication.
Yes. And I just have to say that, so I don't have ADHD. I don't have anyone in my family with ADHD, but I have seen the power of music in my own life. My mom had dementia. And so she was eventually in a home, and I would go to this home in this particular floor. Everyone had dementia. But what amazed me, as soon as you turned on music, sometimes there'd be this, this older person who, you'd see them with their walker, barely able to make it into the dining hall. You turned on music. I'll tell you, that person stood up and started dancing. You're like, where did that
amazing,
come from?
Eh?
Right?
And it's what is in the memory. Because my dad had a twin, and it was female. And so my mom and dad would go visit her, and they'd bring CDs, and they'd play old hymns. She would start to sing along but she had, as things really like, her speech and all of those other things really deteriorated. But when the music came on, it was still within her brain, function. And she would sing along. And my mom and dad were just totally shocked. Like,
And that's exactly what I was going to say next, because my mom, she could play the piano beautifully. She lost that. She lost her speech. She lost her ability to walk. She, you mentioned so much. And even in the very end of her life, she was lying in bed, unable to communicate. But I would go in and I would sing songs that I knew she knew. And you could see all of a sudden her head would be nodding or something. And you're just like, I know I'm reaching you. I know I'm reaching
exactly. Yeah.
So music taps into something so deep in us, right? So
Yeah.
I
It
want to talk
really,
about,
really does. Yeah.
yeah. So tell me about how music changed your life.
So, coming from the musical family that I came
Mhm,
from, my grandmother was a music director for a church for 25 years.
mhm,
And so she was organist, pianist, and choir director. Then my mother was a soloist. And I started to sing when I was around 8 or 9 years old as a boy soprano.
mm.
So music was constantly in the house. And, and grandma really took me under her wing, Grandma Violet, and she's referred to in the book. And she really worked with me, and so did my mom. But grandma really sort of added a polish to things that I was working with, and taught me about phrasing and diction. She always used to say, "Where are your D's and T's, Ian?" You know. And as a result, I have really good diction. People keep telling me they love to hear me sing because they can hear the words. So
Right.
that's really nice. But the other great thing was, so grandma would, help me start to learn a new piece. Mother would help me perfect it or work on rhythm, because at that time my rhythm was sometimes off. So we found out that when I would be practicing up to 3 times a week or so,
Mhm.
there was a huge difference in my sort of, I guess, with my moods, and then also with the beginnings of sort of my ADHD really lessening for a couple of days. I've talked
Yeah.
to a couple of really good friends
Mhm.
who said, I was stimulated. That was my dopamine. It was stimulating me. It was giving me all of the wonderful things that you see, and music was what I did best. Right.
Mm.
There was other, I mean, I was fairly good in academics except for math, but music was what enjoyed and what I excelled in. And it's still that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your thing. It's still your thing.
It's
Absolutely.
still
I
my thing.
I
And,
get it.
I love working with choirs, and, I haven't been able, because I've just been too busy lately to take on any voice students right now, but I would like to do that maybe in the future, you
Yeah.
know? Um,
Yeah.
and
Nice.
I definitely want to give back to the next generation. So,
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, like, your
mhm.
book does that, right? I think a book is a really good way to give back. So let's talk a little bit about your book. How's your
Sure.
book born?
Well, it's going fairly well, and it's been out for a couple years now. And then how the buzz is just sort of lied down a little bit. So you've got to create another aspect to your brand, right?
Mhm.
And I'm doing some podcasts. Well, my show's called The Arts Report: Music for the ADHD Brain. So you can find that on any of the podcasts. We've got one up on my website right now, and we've got more in the can that we're just working on right now. So I've got a wonderful one with a music therapist. Oh, it was so much fun doing that interview. It was really good. And we're reaching out and doing something totally new. I mean, I am a theater and film grad, but I've decided to write a play. And
Mhm.
so, the play is going to be performed this summer. We originally were going to be part of the Fringe festival that's here, but some politics have gotten in the way. So we're still gonna. I'm still producing it, and so if you go on my website, we will soon have an icon up there about the play, and so it will be like within the Greater Toronto area. Okay, so if people are um, tuning in, and if things are good, we may film it and put it on a streaming service.
Nice, nice, excellent.
Yeah,
I'd love to talk about that in just a
sure.
little while. I want to talk a little bit more about the book, because I want
Okay.
our audience to know a little bit about the book. So why did
Okay.
you decide to write it, and tell us a little bit more about it?
Yeah. Okay. So, the journey has been hard.
Mhm.
The ups and the downs in the career, and And so I started that in 2008
Mm-hmm.
and just really started to, put potential chapter heads down on a page, and then sort of said, okay, what do I want to say about this? And never done this before. And just kind of said, well, maybe this is the time that I needed to do this. And I really felt God was really speaking to me about, sort of sharing my story. So it took 5 years to write. And then another 5 years to find the right publisher. I
Mm.
was going to publish it in the States, but there was some complications that it was going to be too expensive coming back into Canada.
Right.
And so I found the right publisher, Word Alive Press.
Mm-hmm.
They are a faith-based publisher, and they've really helped me. And I mean, I'm just totally blown away at how it's gone around the world. I just, well,
No, it's brilliant.
I know there's a need. I really do. And that has really shown me that that people are looking for alternatives instead of having to take the medication. And so the first bit is, the public school to high school years.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a lot of bullying that went on, during those years. But then there was, when I got out of that and got into college and university, there was just some incredible experiences with working with these artists that I, described. I was in my 20s and 30s. And, and I always just tried to be humble. I always said thank you. I always, thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for letting me able to work with you. It opened so many doors for me. And this is what I'm trying to tell the next generation is, it can't all be Twitter. It all can't be Instagram. It has to be personal. It
Mm.
has to build those relationships are really key. And sometimes you have to go get them coffee and, you know, be there for them with their coat or their umbrella or their hat or whatever. But the thing is that you build a relationship, you build
Mm.
confidence. They see who you are. And that's what I did all throughout. And I'm just so grateful for the people that I've connected with.
Yeah. So is the book then more memoir, or have you added kind of some self-help stuff in there?
When we were originally writing it, and the team
Mm.
that were sort of around me, they said, Ian, at the time, tell your story.
Okay.
And because it's a limited run, I published 1,500 books. I'm planning to re-edit it. There's some
Mhm.
things that I want to put in there. If you go on to my website, I have a specific um, blog that talks about using the music, using breath control, and a constant repetition in like a weekly routine,
Mhm. Yeah.
to help with ADHD if you want to use music therapy. But it's all in conjunction with your ongoing sort of practicing. So if you're a singer, if you're a pianist, if you're an instrumentalist, then, and that is the system that worked for me. Supplementing it every 15, 20 minutes with some water, some deep breathing. That's what really, really helped me. And, like I was in a constant musical environment,
Mm.
so
Yeah. Yeah.
it
No,
was a
that's great.
happy life then.
Yes. And that makes sense. It's a memoir, and if you
Yeah.
read it, you do talk about the things you did that were helpful as part of
Mhm.
the story, but there's no, it's not necessarily straight self-help, which is great. So if you were, if I were to find your book in a bookstore and look at the front cover and the back cover and look it over,
Mhm.
and and I decided to buy it because when I buy a book, I think there's some promise in it. There's something in it for me. What would you say the promise is in your book?
I would really say that um, it it's about the whole journey. It's not just about as what so many families are dealing with ADHD kids, or even
Mhm.
ADHD adults, now are really getting diagnosed. It's about the journey, and it's about, at times just surrendering yourself, doing what you've done the best that you can,
Yeah.
and opening yourself up to God or to a higher power, and just saying, I need help.
Mm.
And that's what I constantly did. Like, that's the family that I come from. On two sides, on my dad's side, my great grandfathers were Baptist ministers. So, the ministry and faith have been I think they're in my DNA. And so doing that, and then the success started to happen, was working with these connections, doing things that just gave me such pleasure, and
Yeah.
expanding my skills. I never thought that I'd have the skills that I do in public relations, marketing, and fundraising, primarily in the arts.
Yeah.
And I'm very proud to say that I've raised $2.5 million for arts and social
Wow.
sciences as a fundraiser.
That's brilliant. That's
So
brilliant.
before I retire, it's got to be
Yeah.
5 million.
Okay, so you're going to double it before you retire. That's
You
brilliant.
betcha. You betcha.
So the
Yeah.
promise is that you're going to show people that life is a journey. It's not this is
Mhm.
right, this is wrong, this is the destination, but it is a journey. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I
Yeah.
just want to say, if you're listening live, feel free to drop us a comment or ask a question. We'd love to hear from you. And if you are
Sure.
watching on the replay, keep watching. There is more to come. I've just put Ian's website up for people who want to check out more about the book and more about Ian. It will also be in the description. All right, Ian, I want to ask a little bit more about strategies. Like if I'm
Sure.
an author and I have ADHD,
Mhm.
or I'm, anyone watching with ADHD, and I do want to move away from the medicine. What
Mhm.
are some of the strategies I might look at?
Well, you got to sort of see, what do you do well,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you know what? Like, just you got to be entrepreneur. And
Mm-hmm.
so this whole idea of just sitting down and just saying, I think I want to talk about this, and I want to talk about this, and I want about, was just kind of, because I'm an organized guy. Like, I have to have lists, or that kind of thing, to just keep me on track. Otherwise, I'm not a happy camper. So the thing is by doing that, I started to write things that I felt good about. There were some chapters that were very hard to write, and one particular chapter I wrote at least 50 times, till I was able to send it to my editor, and they said, enough, Ian, this is how it's got to come down.
Yeah.
you know
No
and
perfectionism there.
and so otherwise, and it's about some personal stuff that's gone on in my life. And but as soon as I read what my editor said, I went, oh yeah, this is right, this is absolutely right. Why was I fussing, trying to, but it's the process.
Yeah.
It's getting it down on paper.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, there is, if you're doing a memoir, there's going to be great stuff that'll just flow really easily, and then the hard bits in your life are hard to write about.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm just checking to see. I made some notes on this, so to see if there's anything else
Absolutely.
that I wrote down in here.
So we're looking at
Okay.
strategies to get us
Yeah.
writing a book when we are dealing with ADHD, whether
Oh,
it's focus or something else, because I know that ADHD is different for different people. So I want to
yeah.
that's
And the
clear.
thing that was with me was, from kind of like mid-teens to my 20s, I couldn't focus. So
Mm.
I would be, starting a project, writing a little bit, and then getting up and going for a drink of water or whatever. And that just disrupts your whole creative time. But that's part of the issues with ADHD. It's just, I got to
Yeah.
focus now,
Yeah.
and I'm really, really grateful. It was that more that I got into sort of a self cleanse. I went through a really bad separation and divorce from my first wife, and it just really defeated me in so many ways. And so I went through a self cleanse, went through a lot of, good Christian counseling, good people around me to sort of, and so after this cleanse, I really felt God was just speaking to me and really touched me to deal with my ADHD. So I think that there's only like if 5% left or so. I mean, I know the symptoms, but after this real supernatural time with God and him really touching me, I had to go deep. There was a lot of stuff to, clean up, go deep into the well. And so I spent that time in the counseling with others that I believed that, were able to help me. Then this supernatural time, and all of a sudden I could sit down and write with no distractions. And I went, whoa, this is not me. This is God. And that's when I really felt like, okay, I do have a message to share, and God really wants me to write this book.
Yeah.
So the other point that came to me is what really helped a lot was having mentors in your life, having people that speak into your life. I have about 5 or 6 amazing, amazing people, and from different sort of, from the arts, from my Christian connections, from close personal friends. And so as I was writing, I would, send a couple of chapters their way and say, what do you think of this? Is this any good? Or, and from all of them, I got, keep writing. This is good. And without that encouragement, I don't know if I would have been so gung-ho, especially the difficult parts to write about. Yeah. But those mentors, and they still are in my life now, they're getting older as I'm getting older, but they're still in my life, and they're in a lot of ways a really strong foundation, and I'm really grateful to have them in my life.
Yeah. Now, I don't have ADHD, but in my imagination, having ADHD can be energy draining.
Oh, totally.
Right. So what are there things you do around that to help you, with that mental energy, that mental focus?
Well, singing for me, or, using any kind of instrumental music or whatever, really gets me going in the morning. So, so I need that stimulus along with a really good cup of coffee. And, just, and so many people that have ADHD saying, oh yeah, they need their coffee. But, it's a personal choice. Okay.
Yeah.
So I stimulate myself that way. And then throughout the day, I might just switch to, instrumental music. Like when I'm in a real writing mode, I put harp music on, and classical harp music. Oh, it's just wonderful. I relax, and, and I don't feel stressed, and the ideas and, stuff flow. I get the work done that I need to get done, so so that's really awesome. But the other thing, one other thing, just, strategy wise, a lot of ADHD friends or people with disabilities, they hang around other people that have disabilities, which is okay. But sometimes you need to be a loner out of the pack. And if you're in that environment all the time, it's really easy to just pick up a lot of those, the negative stuff that goes on. And I'm very susceptible to that. And when I start hearing negative voices and everything, I pull myself right out, because I need to be clean. I need to be pure. I need to be positive. I can't be negative. And, and so I think that's where a lot of my zest, my, chutzpah has come because I know myself now. I know what works. And
Mm-hmm.
when I am in around a negative environment, I don't want to be there long.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And it's interesting you say that. I've heard that from other people in other situations. And the two things I'm hearing are build community. Community is really, really important. And monitor that community to make sure it's a healthy environment for you. Right?
Absolutely.
And I've heard that before. In fact, I had a client who wrote a book about her journey through leukemia. And she said, I was very careful about who I hung out with. I didn't hang
Mhm.
out with cancer patients who were, depressed and down. It's like, nope, I want to be in a very positive mind space because I can't control what's going on with my body. All I
That's
can
right.
do is control what's going on with my mind, right?
Yep. Yep.
And so I've heard that before. It's interesting that you are giving very much similar advice to someone who gave advice for a cancer journey, which is very
Mhm.
different than ADHD. But it's all about building the right community, creating an environment for yourself that is positive, that allows you to stay energized, right?
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
and knowing what energizes you. Extroverts need to go out and be around people, otherwise they'll feel drained. Introverts need to get away from people or
That's right.
right. So it's knowing what is it that lifts you up, and even if
Yeah.
it's music, what type of music lifts you up, what type of music energizes you, what type of
Absolutely.
music motivates you, or whatnot. Makes sense.
Except rock and roll. For
Oh.
save it for later on in the day. Not, it's not good to, at least personally for me, it's
Yeah.
not good to have it, you know, as part of the early part of your day. Save it
Right.
till like 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock, as you're starting to wind down.
Yeah. Or what if
Because
you want to dance? Like
and
80s
you want to
dance,
dance. That's
80s
right,
dance music.
exactly.
If you want to dance, 80s dance music, right?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. I just found another point too.
Sure.
So the other thing that I really thank my parents for this because they were
Mhm.
really goal orientated. And
Mm.
so I like talk about stepping up for the next goal or accomplishment that you want to achieve.
Mhm.
And, like my next goal was doing the play, and
Mm.
we can talk about
Yeah.
that in a minute. But just sort of seeing, okay, and how do I want to rebrand myself now with the book? Where else do I want to go? You know? And so look towards what's your next goal
Mm.
or what have you not totally accomplished that you need to go back and tweak a little bit, but I'm always constantly planning and thinking about my next goals, the mountain that I want to reach, top of the
Yeah.
mountain that I want to reach.
Yeah. I love that. Um,
Hmm.
we actually have a question. Mick
Okay.
Penn has asked, what does making the music yourself do for you that listening doesn't? I love that question, Mick and Penn.
Very nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's exactly the whole fabric. It's like a beautiful tapestry. You know, you've worked hard at your craft and and nothing gives me more pleasure than to be able to sing a song that I've really had to work at. I've got a couple right now in my repertoire that I'm working with, and they're hard, musically to whatever. But when I got it, oh my goodness, the accomplishment just feels like, you could just give me $1 million, like just for that, that experience. And yeah, so performing yourself, and you see, I've been a soloist. I've sung in choral, I've conducted. But there's nothing like the solo to or being a chorister and working on a new piece that's just been commissioned or you're singing a world premiere of. That's an amazing, amazing feeling. So absolutely, that's a great question.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is on top of the joy it gives you, or the depending on what type of music it energizes you, there's also this profound pride in that sense of accomplishment, right? So
Absolutely.
it adds, and I would see that as something that motivates you and builds your confidence. And so I
Totally.
can see how that would be. That's such a great question, Mick, and thank you so much for asking it. And then Lise has said, I truly believe music is medicine and magic too for everyone. So yes, talking about moving away from medicine toward music, thinking of music as medicine is another way to think about it.
Absolutely. And, I have used that.
Mhm.
Just within the last year, I found out that I had a severe heart issue that required, I had a valve that needed to be replaced. I had triple bypass heart surgery and an aneurysm at the base of the heart. And, so I was while I was in shock, I went back to some of the second cousins to sort of find out, okay, where is this coming from in the family? And on both sides, there was heart issues. So I had the operation, and I know I recovered so much stronger by being in a good, positive attitude, but listening to amazing healing music.
Yeah.
And, and so now, I just celebrated in January the first anniversary from the surgery, and I'm doing really well.
Great. All right. I
Yeah.
want to talk about your show, but just before we do that, I just want to say
Sure.
that Mick and Penn says, thank you. I appreciate your answer. Thank you, Mick and Penn. We actually really appreciate your question as well. All right. So I don't know if you know, Ian, but
Yeah.
I did a solo show before I wrote my memoir. And
Oh,
usually
wow. Awesome.
yeah, memoir and then solo show. And
Tell me more.
No, I want to talk about you.
Okay.
So I'd love to hear, like, why did you decide to do a solo show? Let's start.
Okay. So you mean the stage show? The
Yeah,
stage
why did you decide to do
the play?
stage show? Yes.
Okay. Well, partly because I was really encouraged by another McMaster University alumni that says, Ian, your book is doing so well. Have you ever thought about, taking it to the stage? And I went, yeah, I had, but I hadn't really figured out how I was going to do it.
Yeah.
So what I did was I came up with 3 Ians. This poor world. So there's young Ian. There's 30s to 20s to 30s Ian. And then there's old Ian. That's the role I'm playing right now. And so, okay. And so I wanted to tell the story through each of those different age groups. And my ADHD in the younger years was all over the place, right? But the thing is, I didn't know it then, right? And I just had such self-esteem issues, And so then when I'm more in my 20s to 30s, and I had been diagnosed by that time, or just newly diagnosed. Sort of the world changed. The world was sort of my oyster. And I can't wait to cast this guy because I keep thinking of him like James Dean, like kind of, and even though I wasn't so cool then, but just, having that sort of, okay, I think I know how to handle this, really suave and everything. And then older Ian being, okay, this is how it is now.
Yeah.
I'm grateful, and so it's coming together. I'm so excited. I think it's going to be, we're just waiting confirmation from the venue, but it's going to be July 20th to the 23rd. Brilliant. And we're doing it in our family church, which when I figured out, sat down and did the math, we've been at this church, our family, for 50 years. And with my mom and dad passing, my mom passed 2010, dad in 2012. It's I think it's really suitable that we do it there because that was their second home. And I was just there a couple of weeks ago just singing, and I could just feel their presence. Like, it was so strong. So I'm really happy that that's going to be done. And I just had a really great suggestion from one of my close theater friends that we kind of do it like a radio show. So, to have the actors up using music stands and, with a little bit of movement and stuff. So I will be directing, and we're hoping that it's going to be really successful. I think it will be, just for a small run, just to, get it out there. And then I've written a larger version of it, or a 2.5-hour version with 4 acts. This is only 60 minutes. So just to give people a taste.
That's fabulous.
I'm really, really excited about it. And the gal who's going to be playing my grandma, we've been friends for a long time, and she's got all the spitting image of my grandma Violet, who was huge support. And
brilliant.
And the other thing too is we're going to be showing sort of what the violence was like too. So some of the bullying in public school as well as in high school.
Yeah.
And, and unfortunately, that's all part and parcel of a person who deals with ADHD.
Yeah. And I actually, Mick and Penn have another question somewhat related to that. I'm going to ask you in just a minute. I'm just going to say before we move on that my solo show had music, so I sang twice, and I did I had poetry in it as well. So
nice.
I love that you can be creative in that. So
well, I've written a theme for it. But we're not doing it in this version. Stirring My Soul to Sing, but we're gonna save that for the bigger production, and there's some talk of some couple theater companies looking at it right now. But we bring the finale all together with His Eye is on the Sparrow. And that's one of my favorite pieces. So
Nice. All right. Mick and Penn ask, and this is a really great question. ADHD is often characterized as immaturity. I would love to know how your ADHD presented differently as you, and I want to just be careful, quote unquote, grew old. Because Mick and Penn is not saying you're old.
Not a problem.
Yeah.
You know what? So the thing was, my mother always used to say, well, some of your ADHD is because you're immature. And she was right in a lot of ways, And what I've learned is people with ADHD have different issues with maturity. So, some are younger, some are older than what they really are. And for me, as I've gotten older, you know what? I've tried to keep the childlike element. And I think because that's part of me as an artist. And I just love younger kids. I just, I have 3 grandchildren now. And I know I look young. I just love being able to talk to kids, and especially some that are really dealing with ADHD at a young age.
Yeah.
So I keep myself young. I feel young, and and I want to be there. However, anybody needs me to speak into their life.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna add, Mick and Penn, that I have met people are my age, our age. I'm going to say that Ian and I are similar age, our age, who do not have ADHD and who are not mature yet.
Exactly. And usually probably in the arts, right? Yeah.
I'm just saying. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
One more comment, and then we're going to wrap up.
Okay.
Colleen Taylor McCubbin has said, I'd like to know some of your playlists. So my question to you, Ian, is would you give me a link to some of your playlists that I can put in the YouTube description for people so they can check out your music as well as your book?
I absolutely love Spotify. And I have a playlist on Spotify. It's probably about 30 songs. And it's a combination of choral music, my favorite choral music. It's a combination of some classical music as well as some gospel music.
Yeah.
And and so sure, I'll send you that link.
If you would send us links to your playlists or to your music, And, you know, we would love that. So we have some wrap up comments. Mick
Okay.
and Penn says, "Yay, I love that you have kept a childlike attitude. That's the style." Mick and Penn, I think we both agree. And Lise Parton says, "Thank you, Ian. Your attitude is wonderful and your advice is helpful and appreciated even for those without ADHD. Delightful interview." Okay,
Oh,
as we
thank
wrap up,
you.
where do we find you? I'm going to put your LinkedIn
Yeah,
there.
that's great. I also have a Facebook new Facebook page that we're working on. It's called Music for the ADHD Brain. And
Brilliant.
I got to do a little bit more tweaking with it. I got to get my IT guy on it.
Right.
But if people want to check in there, we'll be listing more about the show and, you know, and the artists that we'll be featuring. You know, I'm really looking forward to interviewing some of my new ADHD friends.
Yes.
Some that are in the arts, some that are not,
Yeah.
and you know, and how they've coped with their ADHD of all ages.
Brilliant.
So,
Thank you so much, Ian, for joining us today. Really, really appreciate all of your wisdom and wonder, because I think you've brought us both wisdom and wonder. So thank you very much. For everyone watching, thank you very much for watching and making all your amazing comments and asking such great questions. We will be back next Thursday at noon Pacific time for another interview. We'll see you then.
wow, that was so